Returning to the language of home. I grew up in Atlanta, and Southern people love words, even more than we love our drive-thrus and family values. We love a brookside view on late noons, after long interstate drives, and hearing my mama say, "We'll be home soon." Words were always what I had to look forward to. At 14, I read myself to sleep for a year straight. Wised up, put my head on straight, took my pen and started to get more out of a page than just the day's date. Talked to myself. The more I spoke, the more the words came, and I knew I was something special. I was grateful and at ease. I was shaken. I was relieved. I'm here for something bigger than me. And something curious came to mind when I wanted to connect to bigger life, when I wanted to feel safe. I had all these words, so I taught myself to pray. I had all these words, and with the aid of my hands, I danced, and all the while, I prayed. When I walk down the street, protect me. When I open my mouth, protect me. When I open my heart, protect me. All the places I go, protect me. All the me that I show, protect me. In this world that I know, protect me. Hello, and welcome to 232425, a podcast about being slapped in the face by not only 2023, but also by the wildly complicated transition that is turning 25. I'm your host, Joska, and I've invited my friends to talk with me about all things life as baby adults. Today is my first episode, and it's a solo episode, so it's just going to be me and my listeners. I'm so excited. I'm very, very excited. I know you can hear it. And if you're watching, I know you can see it. I hope you all are watching. It meant a lot to me that this be a video podcast, so I hope you are watching and having fun doing so. I decided to open this podcast with a poem because it started with poetry, so how else am I going to open it? You know what I mean? So I've been writing poetry since I was a kid. I had a little composition book putting poems in there day after day, mostly based off of like religion. So it was important for me to connect to my roots and talk about praying and talking about words and what language means to me and how I walk through the streets and how every day I pray for protection to be over me, especially walking through the world with anxiety and just not knowing what's going to happen to me ever and living moment to moment. I think praying for protection is just a beautiful way to keep my head up. And that's how I felt like opening up the podcast. I'm just going to be giddy. I'm just going to be giddy this entire time. Deal with it. No. But so I wanted to start off the next part of this pod by just talking about why I wanted to start this podcast. If you saw the trailer, you probably already know. But just to get a little bit deeper into it, I've been feeling very eager to create. And I came to a point where I was just like, it doesn't have to be a film that I create right now, or I can be creating a film. I could be in the process of creating a film, but it doesn't have to come out immediately. I can work on something like this with my friends. I can dictate what the format is. And I have a lot of say in how this goes, and that just made me very excited to do it. I was entering a lot of rooms, of course, where I didn't have a say in how things went, and sometimes it's not always to your liking. And I was getting frustrated by that over and over again, just running up against a wall where I'm just like, I don't know if I like this space. I'm not sure if I mesh well with the people in these spaces. So it's a little bit tricky. I find that being 25 and being a 20 something is a lot about finding where you fit in, kind of like going and exploring these different spaces and seeing which one really attracts you. And sometimes that means you got to make your own space. You know what people you love to be around, and you have to bring them together, and you have to do something with your peers. And I was really, really motivated to do that. And of course, it worked out for the best. I've been having so much fun doing this, and I'm so excited for everyone to hear the remainder of the series. We talk about so much stuff, and y'all are going to hear some very interesting stories, and also you're going to hear some very beautiful conversations. That's why we're here, y'all. And then it's a very inspiring. It's inspired me to come up with new ideas for writing, fictional, non-fictional, talking more about my life. But yeah, I think it's important to talk to peers also about what we're all going through during this time so we don't feel alone. So we know that people are here to build us up while we're going through it. And also just because, this is not an isolated incident. This is not an isolated event. A lot of people go through a lot of the same things being outside of school, being outside of the format of semester chunks, like your life is in semester chunks. Because that's really how I was looking at it. I was just like, oh, now that I'm out of school, this feels so different at first. I've gotten a little bit more used to it. Now, let's be for real. I've gotten I've gotten a lot more used to being out of school, but at first, when I was fresh out of the school, it was feeling like, wow, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with myself. There are no breaks. Like, I just have to work all the time, 365 days a year. Of course, I could take time off, what have you, but it was not like the semester format I had grown up being the only thing I knew. And that's an experience that we all can relate to. And that's an experience that older people probably remember having to go through that transition. So I just didn't see enough people talking about it who are our age. I found a book that I really like, The Defining Decade, which is written by Meg Jay, a clinical psychologist who speaks mostly to young 20 somethings about this transition. And I was like, this is a beautiful book. I love reading this. And I love her metaphors about like feeling like you're in the middle of the ocean, no land in sight, and you have to figure out how to get to shore, a shore that you can't see, so you don't even know if it actually exists, and you don't even know when you're going to get there. I love the way she talks about it. My perspective was that I want to hear a lot more people who are my age at this time right now talking about this. And I think it's going to be really exciting to have this for years to come, and I can look back at it as a sort of time capsule and be able to be like, wow, I've grown so much, and have my friends view it again and say, wow, we've grown so much and we did it together. We stood hand in hand and we walked up the mountain together, because that's literally how it feels like. And I wanted to focus on the year 2023 specifically because I know people have been 20 in every single year of the world's existence. This year, something was different about this year, and I was just like, yeah, I think I need to talk about what it felt like being 25 during this year. Just such a strange year, y'all. Not just for a personal life. I know a lot of people were going through something similar that I was going through, trying to figure out what kind of job I wanted to do. Then the actors' strike and the writers' strike came about, and I was just like, wow, I thought I had figured it out, and now we're on strike, so what do I do now? And just figuring out how to navigate that balance of I'm not working in film and TV right this second. How do I stay afloat by doing my own projects that I like doing? And it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that personal journey, but it was what the rest of the world was going through as well. I was like, we're having wars all the time, which has always been the case, but now I'm of a consciousness that's just like, I can do something. I can speak out and people will listen. I can have an opinion. I can have a stance. I can move mountains a bit more than I could when I was a child. So things just felt really different. The pandemic was kind of waning, and we were seeing different developments in the nation, and it was just like, okay, I'm exhausted. The economy is trash. Everything is so expensive. Like I don't know what we're gonna do. Sometimes I'm sitting here like I don't know what we're gonna do. Stuff's gonna get more expensive all the time. Inflation's just never gonna stop. Like, what are we gonna do at a certain point? Like, my mind was just going in circles and circles because I was really like, we're not gonna be able to sustain this. And so my thing is words, writing, talking, conversations. I just needed to talk about it. So that's kind of how we came about. I want to move on now because I'm asking all my guests to do this activity This activity is called MySpace Top 5, riffing a little bit on MySpace Top 8, which people did back in the day. I know some people are older than me and probably did this more. I was homeschooled and I snuck down to the computer in the basement, the big chunky desktop computer in the basement, and got on MySpace here and there. It was nothing bad about it, but I was seeing what's up. So I knew a little bit about MySpace Top 5. For the podcast, I'm just asking myself and my guests to come with 5 things that really influenced their growth, really changed the way they moved through the world. And it doesn't even have to be that high stakes. Like, you're going to see what my list is in a second, and it's not, it is very not high stakes. So, in no particular order, the first thing on my list, of course, is writing. I have been just knee deep in a journal since I was probably 8, just learning how to write, doing handwriting books at home, and transitioning from public school to homeschool for the first time. And I really didn't have much else to do after getting my work done. I would get my work done so quick, and I'm like, yay, time to write. I remember my first book that I ever wrote. It was called There's a Rat in My Tennis Shoes. Yes, I know. And it was actually a novel. Like, I had 13 chapters before my computer literally exploded. Back then, I had no idea about the importance of saving, like backing up your files. So it was completely lost. That's unfortunate, but you live and learn. Sometimes I think about it, I'm like, dang, I really want to read back to see how I was writing back then. I also wrote a lot of poetry, like I mentioned before. I had poetry composition books and would just write and write and write and be really inspired by the books I was reading, because I was not even a self-proclaimed bookworm. I was a bookworm back then. I remember my friend's dad, because my friend used to come over sometimes, and her dad would drop her off at the side door of our house every single morning, and I would get up early to greet her in the summer and make sure that she got in. I would just be sitting on the couch, having my book, reading until they got there, and I opened the door, and her dad was just like, yeah, I see you with a different book every time we come here. And I was just like, yeah, I live in these books. The worlds in these books are phenomenal. And the way I can imagine these worlds as I'm reading the words on the page, I thought that was just spectacular. I was like, there's nothing like this. Nothing will ever be like this, because you all don't get to assign the visuals, which is cool. I love seeing film. I love seeing TV. It's what I do. But there was something about reading books back then. I was just like, nobody can create the vision of what you're seeing. They're just creating the story. They're creating the world. They're giving you the dialogue. And I thought it was pretty cool that the rest was up to me. So writing, which was inspired by reading. So those two kind of go hand in hand. My second of my top 5 would be physical movement. Physical movement has been, yes, a thing of my upbringing since, I guess, all the time. When I was very little, my brothers, because I have 2 older brothers, they would pretty much joke that I had no rhythm. Well, not both of them, but there would be jokes that I had no rhythm back then. And then my mother put me in dance class, and the rest was history. I found the rhythm. I found the beat. I was never as adept at improv as others, but I learned that choreography quick, and I loved doing choreography. I did eventually love doing improv as well, but choreography was very, very fun to me. Dancing with an ensemble was just amazing. I felt the community around me, and I loved connecting through movement. And also, just even when I'm by myself, physical movement is therapeutic. There's really no other way to describe it. Like, when I'm tired and I need to pick me up, I'll do some movement. Even if it's just stretching, like, I will do some movement. But real, like, unabashed, like, floating of the arms and of the legs. And that's why I started to like improv, because it doesn't matter what other people think. I guess when I was in high school, when things felt really high stakes, when I was a dance major in high school, and that was weird for me to wrap my head around at the time. I'm like, I am a dance major at 15, okay? We're in here on grown folks' business. But at the same time, I was like, that's too much for me. I don't want to be a dance major. I just want to dance. So the stakes were high because we were gearing up for, it was like we were training all the time for something and not just to dance for fun, which I get is the mission, and it should have been the mission, you know? I just wish there was a space cultivated where it felt more like I wasn't being so judged in an anal way, that I could just let loose and be free and fulfill what I felt was the purpose of dancing, and that everybody can dance and everyone should move their body. So once I got out of that high school environment and I just started moving my body without having anybody to tell me you should do this or you should do that, I really started to appreciate physical movement on a whole nother level. And that's physical movement. My third one is water. What's your sign? I'm a Cancer. Cancer is a water sign, y'all. But this is an interesting thing for me because I've always been quick to tears since I was a little kid. I would be called sensitive and I would hate that. But then I got very comfortable with it because you know what? There's nothing wrong with crying and nobody can ever tell me that ever again. Shoot, I cried on the way to this studio. The way the wind was blowing in my face, I couldn't help it. Tears were just coming. Because tears are tears. It's just literally a liquid coming out of your body. So I have no problems with it. But something about water as a whole, just like bodies of water, I really started to connect to more a couple years ago. The only reason why I took a step back from it is because when I was a teenager, I went on a trip with the choir I was a part of. And y'all listen, singing was not my gag. It was not. I am not a bad singer. I won't say I'm a bad singer. I was just in the choir because they took fun trips. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna hold you. The choir took fun trips, and one day we went to the beach, me and the choir. And everybody was swimming in the ocean. I was like, oh, that looks so cool. That looks so fun. Let's go do it. And I went to go do it, and I got in the ocean. I almost did not get out of that ocean, okay? And when I was screaming for help, these kids thought I was playing. They really thought I was playing. I almost did not get the help that I needed. But luckily, my brother was there, and he knew what was up, and he got me out of the ocean. And I was probably coughing for half an hour straight, but after that experience, I really took a step back from getting in large bodies of water. I would go swimming sometimes in the pool, but I never went into anything any water that went above, like, my chest. If it was higher than that, I'm just like, nope, not getting in, not going deeper. Until I went to Martha's Vineyard with some friends. I guess that was in 2021, August of 2021. And we got in the ocean again. And I let that fear go finally. And I was just like, wow, this time I couldn't get out of the ocean, but it was because I loved it so much. And I've heard people say, oh, that water is so cold over there. I didn't even notice. And I am so, I shiver. So I was just like, this water, I can't get out of it. It feels so good. It feels so good for me to be swimming in this. And I feel like I've been healed of that past trauma of almost drowning. I don't know what it was, but I was just like, I feel that I need to be in large bodies of water more often. And everything started to switch for me. And y'all know what? I love when that happens. I love when something that I was fearful of in a certain way in the past, I get to confront it again and I get to fully embrace it. So that's me in water. I love bodies of water now. My number 4, would be Arthur on PBS Kids. The little aardvark man, the little aardvark boy. I don't know why I just said it like that. But I used to watch Arthur like almost every day coming home from school as a young kid in public school before the homeschool stint. But Arthur was a dream to me. I loved those kids. You know what I'm saying? And they had a really big emphasis on books. And I think that was the pull. That was the magnet for me because I was a really big book reader. And because of that, and because of these kids being like, having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. I was like, you're damn straight. You're damn straight. You know what I mean? Arthur was just that show. A lot of my friends might agree if y'all watched Arthur. Like, it was a vibe. They had like postcards from Buster, and Buster would like travel the world, and they would have footage of kids in different countries, and it was just ever expansive. And I love what that did for me as a little kid. They had the smart kid, the brain, which I ended up assigning a friend as a nickname in high school, who ended up also being our valedictorian in high school. Shout out to you, Brain. And at a certain point, Jordan, his name is Jordan. At a certain point, I forgot his name because I was calling him the Brain for like a year straight. I was like, wow, what is your name? That's how much I liked Arthur, though. It really carried me. Really carried me for years. And I will tell y'all, I'm 25, as we all know, as is the point of this podcast. Sometimes I might like pull out a little YouTube, pull out a little streaming service and turn on Arthur at this age. I'm not going to hold. I will not lie. I do still watch kid shows sometimes. And I don't think it's because I want to be a kid or all this, I want to stay young. I just think it's connecting me to something light and something fun and something that it just gives you a break from all the stuff. Or there's something about nostalgia, which is the big theme around this podcast. And of course, all my social media is like Y2K themed for this podcast. It's just because there's something about nostalgia for me that is comforting. And I know people can relate because there's all these Y2K enthusiasts who really have fun thinking about and reliving the past. And it's not just that we're obsessed with the past, it's that things felt easier back then, not only because, not that they were easier, but, you know, we were younger. We were younger and we didn't have so much stress. We didn't have as many responsibilities. And the world just seemed fun and cute. You know what I mean? That's what Arthur does for me, too. I'm going to go on to my fifth one, which is That's So Raven. It's so funny. I don't have any people on this list. And at first I felt guilty for not having any people on this list. But now that I think about it, the reason that I chose That's So Raven was mostly because Raven-Symoné she's a trailblazer. Say what you want to say. She's a trailblazer. She was my first example of like a comedian, someone who commits to the bit. As a child, she was my first example of that because I was young and I wasn't allowed to watch too many stand-up comedians do their thing because there will be a lot of inappropriate content that might come up. But watching Raven-Symoné and having that camaraderie in my household about there's a black family on Disney Channel, we need to sit down and watch, that was stunning. That was stunning to me. And I loved the fact that this girl is a psychic and she gets to do some cool stuff and she's hilarious. Her comedy is definitely a big inspiration for my comedy. Just the character Raven Baxter, not just Raven-Symoné, but the character Raven Baxter is a big inspiration for my comedy. Maybe I should have put Raven Baxter. I'm still guilting myself for not having an actual person on this list. But yes, Raven Baxter. The comedic timing, her physical comedy. I'll say it again. Like, say what you want to say. This is just indisputable for me. She was really, really just amazing and just a force to be reckoned with as I was watching as a kid. And again, as I continue to go back and watch reruns to this day. So, yeah. Those are the things that I feel like really have influenced the way I am, the person I am. And of course, there are tons more, but those are just the 5 that I chose to introduce to you all today. I love it. I love looking back and examining how, who, what did it. But I don't try to dwell too much on why am I like this, you know? I just really love who I am, and I'm glad I get to share it with you all. All right, enough lovey-dovey.
What do you mean you've been listening this whole time and you haven't subscribed yet? I don't see what the holdup is. The button is right there. And while you're at it, follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You obviously like the show.
We're going to get to our next point of topic because this ain't that long of an episode. We got about 8 minutes left. Our next point of topic is learning experiences. This is all about 25. Learning experiences is all about 25, all about being a 20-something. Okay? When I had a car, I got a car, let's see, at the end of 2022? Yeah. About almost a year ago to this day, maybe a little bit less than a year ago to this day, I got my first car. Let me tell y'all, I didn't know enough about cars to be getting no car. I just thought I need a car. I moved back home to Atlanta from New York, needed a break from New York. I said, I can't live and make it in the city without a car. Unfortunately, shouldn't be like that, but that was the case. I tried to do as much research as I could. Didn't realize I didn't even scratch the surface. I had a pretty good job, paying me pretty well at the time, and I was like, I can get a car. I'm ready to go. And I just didn't do it right. I didn't do it right, and I would spend nights like crying in my car. Like the only thing that I really, really appreciated having this car for, no, maybe not the only thing, because I did get around, and I was very grateful for the transportation. But something that I really use this car for that I'm really appreciative of is just having that alone time away from people, away from family to let it out. I would scream, I would cry, I would talk to myself, I would read in my car. And I only had the car for 4 months. But this is what happened. I prayed for a second chance. I said, I don't feel ready to have a car note. I'm just 16. I was 24 at the time. I'm like, I'm just 16. Please. I'm not ready for a car note. I'm not ready to pay car insurance. I just felt so stressed out. And even having money, I realized that there's still a lot of expenses that I had. And I was just like, what's going on? It was so overwhelming. It felt like I needed to ease myself in expense by expense. Like I needed to ease myself into adulthood expense by expense. But this car really took me for a loop. And 4 months in, I was on the way to work and I got into a little car accident. Long story short, my insurance ended up paying for the whole rest of my car note. And I felt like I got my second chance at everything. I don't have a car right now. Gonna get it again when I'm ready. But I was just like, wow, that second chance I asked for, it's mine. And that was incredible. So learning experience after learning experience, that's just one example. But I'm always being in the thing, I feel, and having to learn from it and not just already knowing. With the evolution of what TikTok has become, I think it has been very helpful to look up tips to know beforehand and all that stuff, especially being at this age. I'm sure it was a lot harder for people before we had all this social media stuff. But there is something about TikTok also on the negative side. It can be overwhelming, and you always, it's always on a case-by-case basis, these experiences. We're all different people. We do go through some of the same structures of things, but it's going to be different experience, person by person. So sometimes I can't always trust that this information I'm getting is going to work for me 100%. And that was just something that I was running into. But we're going to talk about learning experiences a lot on this podcast, so please stay tuned. This is 20-something. This is 25. So next, before I move on to my activity, my second activity, I want to talk a little bit about having all the time in the world. It's a common myth that has been told to 20-somethings, especially for my generation. I think it's more something that we tell each other, but I do hear adults telling us that we have all the time in the world. I won't say it's a complete myth. We have a lot of time. We are still very young. We are still very baby. But what I will say is you shouldn't take that line, you have all the time in the world, as an excuse to do nothing. I think it's good to take a break, to take a breath, and to take a pause. My thing is, though, just sitting in stagnance. Is that a word? Stagnance? Just sitting in stagnance for whoever knows how long, not having a plan. And your plan can even be, I'm going to explore this, I'm going to explore that. Not that you have to commit to it yet. But also, did the lights just turn off on me? Whoop, sorry about that. We had a little technical snafu. We'll be back right after this. when people say you have all the time in the world, what I'm now seeing that means is you have a lot of time to be in preparation and bring things to fruition, but you don't have a lot of time to just sit and do nothing at all. You have moments where you should sit and do nothing at all, but it shouldn't be the total scope of your whole schedule. At a certain point, you have to be planning, or you have to be exploring, experimenting, trying something out. So when I just kind of challenge other 20 somethings to think about when they hear you have all the time in the world, think about that. Think about what you can do with all that time you have in the world. That's more time to take a dance class. That's more time to learn a new language. That's more time to go volunteer you know what I mean? Like, you have all the time in the world not to just sit down in the corner. You have all this time in the world to explore and figure out what it is you want to do. Even if you have to like look up, I was talking the other day about auditing classes. Like, these classes cost money. Go do something that's free. Go to your local library. I'm gonna run that to the ground. Go to your local library and check it out and see what they have to offer, because libraries oftentimes have a lot of free classes, have a lot of free opportunities. Clubs are awesome. Learn a new hobby. I'm always gonna encourage a hobby. Like, don't let nobody tell you you can't have a hobby, or you shouldn't have a hobby, or there's no time for hobbies. I don't know how we would continue to exist without something else. We can't have only one thing to depend on. Also, we're so dynamic as human beings. We should just use our time to explore, and it could be fun to discover something that we love that we didn't realize we loved. So that's my tea on that common myth. It's like half myth, half real truth to it. All right, next is my activity. So, my activity is Would You Rather 20-something edition. I'm over here looking at my notes. So, I'm going to read it off. The first Would You Rather is, would you rather have a stable job with average pay but little passion, or a job you're passionate about with uncertain income? Definitely for me, it's going to be a job I'm passionate about with uncertain income, because to me, money, I always figure it out. I don't know what else to say. Like, I always figure it out. I don't prioritize money per se like some people do. Like, it's about money. In my head, I'm just like, I've seen my family have next to nothing, and we figured it out. And not that I want to be sitting in stress all the time, but it's not as bad. Like, there's money if I'm doing something that makes money, money is going to come. Money's always going to be coming into my atmosphere, and I say that money is a boomerang. It always comes back. I don't think I need to prioritize having the same check every 2 weeks than overdoing something that I love to do. It's my mental health over everything. Second, would you rather build a strong social media presence for networking but risk privacy invasion, or maintain a private life but potentially miss out on opportunities? I'm gonna have to go with build a strong social media presence. It's tough because sometimes social media annoys me and I just don't want to do it anymore. I don't think I'm thinking much of a privacy invasion risk, but more that social media can bombard you with so many things. I don't think it's natural. I don't know the word. For lack of a better word, I don't think it's natural for us to be scrolling and seeing something that makes us so happy, so big of a dopamine hit, and then scroll to the next thing a millisecond later and we're seeing graphic images of violence and all this. And I don't think that's mentally safe in a certain way. So social media can get triggering sometimes, and it's a mixed bag. Like most things, it's a mixed bag, and I think we just have to pick our battles. So I do feel with the career path that I've chosen, I do need to be present on social media, and that just is what it is. I can protect myself, take social media breaks as I need to. Next, would you rather? Would you rather prioritize experiences and adventures, even if it means delaying major life milestones, or focus on achieving traditional life goals at a younger age? Yeah, I think I would prioritize experience and adventure. Like, I'm really ready to travel. I say that every year. Then things come up by surprise that I wasn't expecting, and then maybe I have to delay it. but I just have to step in and prioritize the adventures that I want to have. So that's my next goal. That's my next goal. But I am proud of myself. This past year, I actually did travel quite a bit more than I thought I would. It was very surprising. A couple of times I got flown out, which was cool and really special. I love when that happens. And other times I made it a point to be like, this is what I'm going to spend my money on. I don't care about doing these things that everybody tells me I should do. I'm going to have a fun time and I'm not going to regret it. I'm going to spend time with my friends and my community and I'm not going to regret it. So, yeah, I would rather prioritize experiences and adventures right now. Major life milestones, I feel like that's referring to marriage, maybe having kids, and I just don't feel like I'm in the place to even be thinking about that yet. And it is to my understanding that I have a lot of time for that. I don't know. I am always thinking about where the world is and like, ooh, can we bring kids into this world? So, yeet. I don't know. This episode is a lot longer than I had been planning it to be, but I think that's okay. I think you all are getting a gist of what this is going to be. I always tell people, oh, it's going to be 50 minutes, it's going to be this and that, and it's just like so much longer. I don't know how to estimate time, but it's okay. Let me go down to, oh, I can do that in my last episode. There was something I wanted to do, but I'm going to save that for my last episode. So, my old TV Big 3, which is the last activity I'm going to do before we close. This is basically astrology based, and my Big 3, which is a Cancer Sun, Moon, and Capricorn Rising, is kind of influencing my choices for this. But we're going to pick a TV show and we're going to say which characters represent our Big 3. For me, I've decided to bring Schitt's Creek to the table. I watched it maybe 2 years ago for the first time, and I was just like, oh yes. Maybe not everybody's cup of tea, but I was on the floor. Hello? So my Big 3 from Schitt's Creek will have to be Twyla, Sun. Because I don't know, she's just so innocent, and she just don't be caring, right? She's just frilly and sweet, and I feel like that's my default. I'm saying Sun is a default. So I'll say a Twyla Sun. Stevie Moon, because she's so emo. You know, there's no way else to describe my moon but emo, I'm afraid. Like, Stevie is adventurous, emotional, always trying to figure out what path she wants to go, and that's very relatable. So that wasn't even hard for me to choose. This is Stevie Moon. And for all my Schitt's Creek fans, it's going to be a fun one. A David Rising. Because David I loved where his trajectory went. He ended up starting a business. And that's exactly it feels very Capricorn. It feels very that ambition, that entrepreneurial spirit. I was just like, yeah, let's do that. Let's pick David. I feel the humor, the vibes, the attitude. He can be funny. He can like really talk about people in a certain way that I think is very accurate. And I just love it. So that's my Big 3. I hear like, yay, hand claps in the back of my head. I did it. I recorded the first episode. That was it, you all. That was the first episode. The next episodes are going to be so fun. I really hope you come and join me. And I really hope you really grasp what we're saying and really ask yourself the same questions. I was excited to do this with a social media component to it because we will be getting interactive. I will be talking to you all, showing you all some behind the scenes, showing you all just like how much fun it was to make this. Very hard work, but very fun. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And join us next week as we talk all about creativity with my good friend Marissa. It's going to be a time to remember. See you all next time. Bye! First episode of 23, 24, 25 in the books!
23, 24, 25 is a podcast produced and hosted by Joska. Graphic design by Joska. Executive producer, director of photography, and editor, Dante Charles Critchlow. Music by Fadal Moore. A special thanks to Anthony and Celintia Moore, Constance Moore, and Harold Hickson for their contributions to production. And a special thanks to viewers like you who create the community of my wildest dreams. Thank you.
23, 24, 25 TV.